read his book about 10 years prior and decided to call him up. I never met him before, but I called him up and I said, hey, I'm thinking about this idea and I think your technology could be used for it. So, but I could be wrong. So I'd like to tell you what the idea is, then you tell me that either it's been done before, it's a dumb idea, or that maybe we should investigate this a little further. So after a few conversations, he said, let's investigate it a little bit. I asked him to write a little one-page abstract. I said, well, tell me in your words what this idea is and how you would make one of these things. And he, to my kind of surprise and delight, he actually did. We started up the company. I licensed all his intellectual property from University of Illinois. He became a co-founder with me when we started ShareThis. And we had a number of PhDs in his lab work on some of the early problems that we identified. That led to him asking me to be part of this book, which Gary Winnick uses in his curriculum, The Entrepreneurial Engineer. And again, you have no idea where these things can lead. This has been very exciting. And part of the reason why it's exciting for me is because, again, when I was in school, I didn't necessarily know what the relevance was of some of the things I was taking. And it wasn't until a couple years after I got out of school that it hit me, that I got into the real world and started to see the impact you can make when you understand the physical properties of the world and understand how these things can work and that you can make new things based on that knowledge. And so that experience that I've had, I'd love to be able to get into the hands of others. Now, I will admit, I'll admit a bias, and I can do it because I'm here, the case, which is I've been on some advisory boards at Purdue and University of Cincinnati and Xavier, and many of them have entrepreneurial programs, entrepreneurship programs. Not quite like what we were doing at Time, which is pretty innovative. And my bias is that I think you need to know something before you become an engineer, or become an entrepreneur. That may not be true 100% of the time, but I think by understanding a discipline and really understanding a domain and being facile at some domain, whether you end up applying that domain directly or not matters. And so I typically will encourage a younger person to actually go do something first, to actually go understand something and be an expert at that thing, and then learn how to leverage that beyond into new ideas. And this is important now because, as Bob Dylan says, times are changing. What's required for engineers today is different than what was required for engineers in the past. Dr. Goldberg calls this the current curriculum, part of the Cold War era curriculum of learning. And communication, multidisciplinary thought, synthesis and analysis of ideas is becoming more and more important. So we talk often about bringing in other elements of the humanities and arts into engineering itself. But this is not, the importance here is that sometimes people feel that means you're going to minimize the quantitative aspects of math and science, and that is not implied at all. This is additive to. You still need to understand and have that rigor. But also understand more about how to think, right? How to think, how to attack and solve problems. Because actually, as Gary Winnick mentioned earlier, in the description of the innovation, it starts with answering the question, or asking the right question, which is, what is the desired state? What is the should be? Where are we going first? And it's in that question that you're really framing the rest of the engineering problem, right? So more of this probably could be used in our engineering curriculum. So there are three principles that come to mind when considering the entrepreneurial track. One, engagement, creation, and then thinking through the eyes of others. And we'll just go into this a little bit. So first of all, engagement. I've been lucky enough that I've been able to do the things that I love to do. I found the things I love to do first, and then I found out that I could get paid for it later. Whatever I do, I try to make sure I'm having fun doing what it is I'm doing. And I think that goes a long way. It gives you a lot more energy to do more than the next guy. So first of all, engage in things you like, and then find engagement in all those activities. And understand the details of any of those activities. So, and then ultimately that will lead to mastery. So why does this thing do what it does? how does this work, and how does it get funded, et cetera, et cetera. On the create side, I could say as a VC and being on the board of a number of companies, as a board member, it's easy to be critical. It's easy for anybody to be critical, quite frankly. And too often, that's what people might catch themselves in, and versus going out and creating. And it's the act of creating and often failing that leads to a lot of the innovation, which also leads to the satisfaction, I think. So definitely promote the idea of get those ideas out, work on them. If they're not worth working on, then don't waste your time on them. But if they are, go out and explore and get help. And finally, look at the world through the eyes of others, whether it's thinking of a problem through the eyes of a customer or your employees. I think being an entrepreneur is an act of servanthood to a great degree. There's nothing that I get more satisfaction from than hiring and building a team of people. The team I have out in Mountain View is is led by our Chief Technology Officer, who was a 4-time entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur, graduated engineering from IIT in India, and then Cornell after that. Have a number of very talented people on the team, and the only way to bring those people on is to kind of humble yourself first and know that they know a lot more than I do. And too often we've seen CEOs and founder CEOs fail, and it's because of this issue, because the saying is B players only hire B and C players. They don't hire A players. So the way to get the right team is to be able to hire A player and admit you're probably not the A player. And you'll go a long way, and you'll find out that it makes work a lot easier too. Again, easy to say and hard to do to really put that in practice, but it's something that I try to encourage people to think about. There's obviously then a couple cautions. What this has to do with British Ninja, I don't know, but I just thought it was a pretty funny sign. So obviously you have to be optimistic and a bit of an idealist, but there's also a caution. I think what it really relates to is there's the ideal and then there's the practical realities, starting with people. People, it's like marriage. They're not perfect. We all have our idiosyncrasies, and you can't hire somebody and then get rid of them right away because you found out they do something you don't like. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to leverage people's strengths and minimize weakness and get them into the right role, whether that's at the individual level or the organizational level. They're the practical realities of the world we live in that we have to work through to get things done. And sometimes when you go through an engineering discipline or if you have an engineering mindset, you feel like you have complete discrete control over the environment. Well, that's true on a computer, but it's not true in the real world. So those ideals should be used for setting vision and guides, which is also why they should be high level and big ideas, but not too detailed, because your path may change. And then mastering the obvious isn't easy. So when if somebody makes something look simple, it's probably because they've had years and years and hours of practice doing it. There aren't many things that I know that I've done right the first time. And it only comes through a lot of practice. So many of you probably, and end with this point, might be familiar with this. This is Carnegie Hall. And the old famous joke, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. And one of the ways you practice as an entrepreneur is you go out. And like Carl said, you start up companies and you try it over and over. You understand when to cut your losses and then take that learning and move on. But by all means, keep listening and keep learning. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Jim.